This is awesome, man. I'm so happy to finally get a chance to visit with you, because the first time I really got a chance to hang with you was at that, was it the Navy SEAL thing?
Navy SEAL Foundation.
Yeah, you guys were hosting that in Houston, and that's where we kind of got the chance to really sit down and talk for a little bit, I felt, right? So before we get started, though, I've had the honor of meeting you already in the past, but for those listeners that haven't met you yet, why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure. Pete DiSanto, President of Operations at Enchanted Rock. Born and raised in Boston. You'll hear the accent. Lived in Boston for about 30 plus years, and then took a couple of jobs that brought me out, moved a couple of times with the family, and wound up in Texas.
And that's where Houston is where you live?
Houston's where I live now, just on the outside.
And that's the headquarters of Enchanted?
Yes, Enchanted's, if you dropped a pin, if you look at Houston as a clock face, right in the dead center is where we're at.
You got it. So you're on a pretty advanced technology application that serves not just our industry, but a lot. And I had the opportunity to sit down with your CEO once as well.
Right.
And he's got a pretty fascinating story. I love sitting down with visionaries that have big fat brains, and
he has a huge fat brain.
Oh, there was no doubt.
He's one of the best engineers I probably ever met. Electrical engineer, Texas A&M. Just
you can see he's very cerebral.
Very cerebral. Obviously, former Navy nuke after you get out of A&M. Tons of experience on the market side, energy trading, plant maintenance at fossil nuclear plants after you get out of the Navy, built businesses.
Yeah, his story, Enron, he's got quite a colorful past.
He's made a lot of stops.
Yeah, man. But that's awesome, because those people that don't have that perfect construct to a resume, or, it's a homogenous, narrative that shows how I was just enlightened, one perfect checkbox after the other, those people tend to not really be as exciting to talk to.
Right. And he has the uncanny ability to see an opportunity or a challenge, hey, something didn't go right, challenge, and ask the 5 whys and really drill down, like what really happened and why did it happen? What did we learn? And everything's a learning experience to him. But when you relearn something a second time, and you should have learned it the first time.
Well, listen, let's start back at the beginning with you, though, because you came from Boston. I love Boston. I spent New Year's Eve at 2000 in Boston with all my brothers.
It was tough to leave, I'll be honest. It was tough on me. It was tough
Not in the winter time.
Not in the winter, yeah.
God, it's wicked cold there, right? Wicked.
If you don't, there's a lot of places that you'd probably say this, but if you don't like the weather, you wait a minute, and that's Boston. It's 80 degrees, and then it's not 80 degrees, and it's snow and rain in. And then it's back to something else.
That town is like one of the most historical towns. My kids have been there, and there is so much greatness.
It used to be very blue collar. It's probably changing with the pharmaceutical landscape now. There's so many pharmaceutical headquarters.
A lot of healthcare, private equity up there too.
A lot of colleges, universities.
Some of the biggest ones, right? MIT, Harvard, all the smart kids.
All the smart kids.
So, what's your story? Where are you actually from? Are you from Boston, or from?
I'm from Boston. I'm from Hyde Park, southern tip. It's the part of Boston you don't hear a lot about, because it's probably the youngest part of Boston that was in the city limits. Is the southern tip is Hyde Park. It's right next to.
How far is that from Faneuil Hall?
It's only 5-6 miles from Faneuil Hall.
My favorite part of Boston.
But it's 5-6 miles of back. There's not an easy way to get there.
Yeah.
But it's all inner city right there, and honestly, it gave me the opportunity to go to Boston Latin School. So I went to the oldest public institution in the United States. Boston Latin School it was opened in 1635.
And what grades are they?
7 through 12. It's a college preparatory school, but
you have to dress up?
No, once upon a time, I think it was all male until I want to say like the 60s, 70s, and then they had Boston Latin Academy and some other stuff, but then it was co-ed after that. But there's some really.
How did you end up there? Your parents intentionally, deliberately put you there?
They did.
You in trouble? Were you a problem child?
No, I wasn't a problem child, but. It was a very classical education. Took 5 years of Latin.
It sounds fantastic. You said it was
public school, but you had to take an entrance exam to get in. So out of all the different, there was Hyde Park High, and there was Jamaica Plain High, Roxbury High, and all the different suburbs of Boston had their own high school, but they're all crap. But if you applied and got in. You got to take an entrance exam, and then they forced rank you. And, I think my 6th grade year, when I was in 6th grade, I think 1,800 students in Boston took the exam, and they rank you. And at the time, I think it's changed a little bit, but it was more racially demographics of they took the first 300 white kids, X amount of Spanish. It was that they wanted to get a really good cross section, very cultural cross section. And it's been in the news recently because people go, hey, I was 300. You took 600 students, but I ranked 301. Why not me? And so I think they've changed some of that, but very diverse population there, 7 through 12. And they sat you down on like day one. You get in, you go, and like day one, they bring you in the auditorium, and there's like Joseph Kennedy's name, all the big alumni across, like Cotton Mather, all these people from the Revolutionary time. Benjamin Franklin, like, all these people. Like people that were in Boston at the, 1600s, late 1600s, 1700s, 1800s, going to school there because it was the place to go. And the headmaster at the time goes, look to your left, look to your right. When you graduate, somebody's not going to be there. Mm. And so I think my 60 year, they called it 60 year. I think we had about 600 students, and when we graduated, it was maybe 350.
Wow,
so true to nature,
was high.
Attrition very high, very high. So
I was seeing, and is it because of like, are you guys doing like Singapore math and Latin and all kinds of it?
Yeah, very tough curriculum. It was purely college preparatory. There were no tech classes. You couldn't go do auto body. You couldn't do welding or anything like that. It was.
Did they have sports?
They had sports.
What did you do? Do you play any?
Yeah, I did track. I wrestled for a year. I did track. I played football.
Only a year for wrestling? What happened?
It wasn't for me.
I got you.
It wasn't for me. It was fun. I was in better shape than I ever did playing football or anything else.
Sure.
It was wrestling. But
now, did you have any siblings that went to school?
I did. I have 3 sisters. One older, we're kind of Irish twins, and then 2 younger sisters. And my oldest sister and my middle sister went to school there. My baby sister went to Boston Latin Academy. So there were Boston Tech and Boston Latin Academy that were, like, say, number 2 and number 3. Boston Latin School was number 1. Not to be confused with Roxbury Latin. You got to pay to go there.
Okay. All right. Wow, man. I do remember, like, when I was stationed in Connecticut, I'd come back, and my father was military, so I moved all over, mm-hmm. right? And I got the privilege of seeing what it was like to go to school in, North Dakota and Spokane, Washington. I was all over the country, went to high school in Southern California.
That makes you pretty resilient.
You learn how to acclimate quick.
Yes,
right?
I can imagine.
Yeah, you have no choice. It's a survival skill, and it's really critical to have that. I mean, you develop as you're in that age demographic where you're just truly supposed to be in pursuit of your IQ, so to speak. I was also, in parallel to that, learning high EQ skills. I mean, some would tell you very low EQ skills, but I was trying to understand how to acclimate, because it is massively different. I mean, think about how much different Boston is from Montana or Wyoming or right. the Pacific Northwest or even Southern California or Texas, where you're at now. It's almost like another country, right?
It is. And I wouldn't say better or worse, just drastically different.
Different culture.
Different landscape. I mean, you go out there and you drive. I mean, when we went to Wyoming, we drove from Houston. We drove all the way from Houston to Wyoming and stopped along the way. We did Sand Dunes National Park, and there's massive sand dunes at the base of the Rockies. It looks like the Sahara Desert in this one section. Southern Colorado. I didn't know about it. We were doing some research. We want to break up the drive because it's about a 20-ish hour drive.
From Atlanta?
From Houston.
Oh, okay.
From Houston. All the way to Amarillo and then into New Mexico. And then we just go, it's north about 5 hours, 6 hours in Colorado to get to the...
Straight up I-25, yep.
Yep. And so we took a detour with the boys. I got 2 boys, Peter and David. One's 18, freshman at UT, and then 1 freshman at Cinco Ranch High School. So I got 2 freshmen. And we like long road trips, and they obviously have phones and devices, and they can be pretty occupied. But we went to Sand Dunes and made a pit stop there, went to a couple different places before we went skiing in Wyoming. It was great.
And that's where you went?
Yeah, Snowy Range. It's... like I said, you get all the way to Laramie. It's just over the border, Fort Collins, Colorado. It's maybe 30 minutes north from there. Get to Laramie, and it's like an old Western town with the saloons up and down the street. We had a nice Airbnb on the 3rd floor of one of those like old saloon storefront buildings, and then it was maybe about a 40-minute drive, winding road out to Centennial, and that's where it was. And we hit it right. We had I think it was 5 peaks there, 4 or 5 lifts, and we had the place to ourselves. I mean, it was one.
How long ago was this?
This was 4 years ago.
Okay.
We did it every year. We stopped going to Laramie, went to Glenwood Springs, and we went somewhere else in Colorado. But
so this is like just before COVID broke out?
Just before COVID broke out.
Yeah. Perfect timing. You nailed it.
Yeah. And then as it broke out, and then we're reading about it in Facebook and just Houston Chronicle and stuff like that. And they're showing all those pictures of like empty stores. You know, it's almost like the Northeast when a blizzard comes in. You see, like everybody went out and bought milk, eggs, and bread, and a lot of French toast was being made. But they showed all these stores with no food on the shelves, and you're like, whoa. But that panic hadn't hit Colorado yet, so we're on the drive back, and we're
Grocery
stopping
shopping.
And like, get some tomato sauce, get some more pasta, and we came back with
grocery shopping from Colorado or from Wyoming.
Yeah, just to make sure.
But look, those road trips will be calloused in their brains for life. I've done the same thing, right? So every year summer, I would grab my kids and sometimes let them bring a friend. And if it wasn't me driving one of our vehicles, I'd rent like a Sprinter. And we would leave on a Friday, come back on a Friday. The only rule we had was we couldn't plan it out. We just woke up that morning, and over breakfast, we'd be like, what do you want to do? And the first time we did it, I think we did like 12 states. We did the whole thing up through New Mexico. We went laid up wherever Texas Tech is at, and then we went up through New Mexico.
Lubbock.
Yep, passed through the Air Force Academy, stopped at Fort Collins, Colorado, CCSU, had Bojo's Pizza, went up to no, it's not. It's Cheyenne. Is that where it's
Cheyenne.
Cheyenne's where the big rodeo is, and then we stayed there for the night, and then drove to Cody, and then hit Yellowstone the next day, and like New Mexico, we hit Roswell.
That sounds like fun.
Every day was just, where do you want to go? And it was all, I mean, at the time I was the only driver. So I'm like, the most I'm probably going to drive today is 8 to 10 hours. So we got to at least have fun, and your kids will remember that stuff. I know that my kids had a great time, and I'll be doing it still. I have a daughter that's a junior in high school, and she's.
Yeah, those are fun trips. We're trying to plan it now. We're trying to make sure that there's some alignment between UT's spring break and Cinco's spring break. But so the second year we did was because, I mean, don't get me wrong. There's some slopes in the Northeast. There's Killington in Vermont, and Sunday River in Maine, and a bunch, Gunstock and some others, and Attitash, which affectionately known as Attacrash for me. But there's a bunch up there. But then all of a sudden you go, we live in Texas now. We have access to the Rockies, and we don't mind driving. So now all of a sudden you can go to Wyoming, and it's not too much of a haul. You think Colorado's a lot bigger than it is when you're driving, but it's like I said, 5-6 hours straight shot through it. You're like, that's not so bad.
It's not bad at all.
But then all of a sudden, so the second year we say, hey, let's go back to Snowy Range. We had a magical time there. So we get into Colorado. We're getting ready to, we crash in Colorado right over the border in, and I think Trinidad, which is like first like township when you cross over from New Mexico, and about the halfway mark. And we look at the weather forecast, and a 30-year blizzard in Colorado's bearing down on us.
Oof.
Now you think Colorado, it's a snow state. Now they're talking about this like 30-year storm in Colorado. What's that going to look like? And we're like,
great skiing as well.
Great skiing is exactly fresh powder. Let's go. So we get up early in the morning. We had been checking the traffic cams. We went to some website, found the traffic cams and what the roads were looking like. And my wife Karen and I, we said, let's go. So we hop in the car, and we're from Boston. We drive through all sorts of weather. Let's go. And all of a sudden it's whiteout condition. Then you start seeing the highway signs that say, if you have chains, put them on. And there's a law in Colorado, if you're a tractor trailer, you got to put the chains on. So we see all these tractor trailers on the side of the road, and you can't see but 5, 10, 15 feet in front of you, and it's whiteout. And my wife's Pathfinder is front wheel drive only. I'm like, well, let's stop and get some chains. So we start at Walmart, get a couple chains, throw them in the back, never put them on. Just kept going. And then we went as far as we could go, whiteout conditions, heading back to Wyoming. And we finally got to Fort Collins, and the highway shut down. 30 miles of highway to get to Wyoming shut down. Maybe a couple days they said they'd get it open because they had, I think 15, 20-foot drifts, and they were using backhoes, not snow plows, to clear the highway. So we're like, oh shit, what do we do? Like spring break's kind of ruined. So we made our way back to Denver, and we're sitting in like a Panera Bread going, like, what do you want to do? Because we got to rent skis. They have to have lift tickets because it was still during COVID, and they were giving a certain amount of lift tickets out. So you had to kind of marry, do they have a place to stay? Do they have rentals?
And
can I get a ticket? And my wife and I hunting, Googling. The kids are like, oh, spring break's ruined. And my wife happens to call Sunlight Mountain in Glenwood Springs, out way past the Continental Divide and maybe about a 2-hour drive from where we were. And they were so nice to us. They said, hey, hold on, you need a place. My wife Karen explained the whole story, what we were doing. And they said, hey, hold on. We don't have lodging, but I know a place. If you won't mind, I'm going to call them. Stay on hold. So Karen stays on hold. They call this lodge. They have a 2-queen, 2-bedroom, full kitchen room because, that's how we vacation. We'll cook our own food if we can. And then she comes back online and said, I found your place. They know you're coming. They actually sell lift tickets on our behalf there, and we have rentals, and it just worked out. We skied for 3 days. And
how were the mountains, bare?
No, the mountains were fantastic.
But I mean, were they packed with people?
Oh, you know what?
That storm probably shut some people down.
It wasn't busy.
Yeah.
I mean, at Sunday River, it was literally come down, go straight to the lift, get right on the lift, go back up. The guy at the lift knew your name by the end of the first day. Like, oh, it's you guys again. And
are you guys all skiers? Or?
We are now.
Were you snowboarders before that?
No. The funny story is I said, hey, I grew up skiing. My wife grew up skiing. My younger son, Peter, took ski lessons while my son, David, was a little young in the Northeast. And they said, hey, David's never skied before. Let's just get on snowboards. We'll get group lesson for just the 4 of us. We're going to do snowboarding. It's going to be great. So we do a half-a-day lesson, and I think my ass was purple for 2 weeks after that. It was I am not a snowboarder.
Yeah, take a number.
I am not a snowboarder. I am a snowboard faller. So the lesson ended. My oldest son, Peter, I mean, could skateboards, ripsticks, I mean, all that stuff. I don't know what your ripstick is, but I mean, he just is a natural on that stuff. And he was actually he was a natural snowboarder. So I say, hey, Karen was staying with David because he was still learning, he hadn't skied before, and she was spending some time with him. And so I go with Peter, and we take one of the lifts up, and I fall down the mountain. At the top of the lift, even getting off, I'm a yard sale, falling off type of thing. And then I crash my way all the way down. And just as we get to the bottom, and I go, I think it's time to go turn in the snowboards and trade them in for skis. And my son Peter was like, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right. And as we walk into the lodge, ski patrol comes running in, like looking around, and they go, oh, are you okay? Because the guy at the top of the lift just said some guy was going to die. And he was looking for me. And I was like, yeah, that was me. I'm getting skis right now. He's like, oh, okay. You're all right? Because you took a pretty hard fall at the top. I'm like, I'm fine. Just my ego. I'm good.
Sure. I've done that. I've had, like you say, like a garage sale, yard sale, and people feel so bad for. I was still laying there. I'm like, I don't care. I was just laying there all banged up, and people were so nice. They're fetching my skis that are halfway down the hill, and like everyone was bringing me poles.
I have no shame. I mean, there were a couple of years before we had kids. We used to ski around the New Year's Eve time frame in Sunday River up in Maine with phenomenal fireworks display, everything. We go up with some friends, and there were a couple times going down the mountain. I'm a kamikaze skier, never took any lessons. If something gets in your way, turn, go really fast type of thing. And pizza and French fries. Yeah. And so I didn't do the pizza very well. So I go ass over tea kettle, and I'm laying there in the snow all over me, buried in the snow. And I'm kind of taking inventory of like, well, my arms work, nothing really hurts. Kind of what I'm still laying on my back, wipe the snow off the glasses, the goggles, and I'm looking up, and I'm like, oh man, I'm right underneath the lift. And everybody going is like, man, that was awesome. Are you okay? Like calling down to me, man, that was awesome. Are you okay? I'm like, I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm glad I could put on a show for you guys.
Yeah.
Find my skis and just keep going.
That's inevitable. If you're going to get into that game and you're going to ski or snowboard, you're going to take a few falls. Right. If you can't handle that, you shouldn't be on that mountain anyway, right? But I've enjoyed it, but kamikaze skiing has definitely been my thing too. So
not anymore. I don't do that anymore. The kids do that.
Yeah, but I taught my kids that, right? So now it's a little bit more dangerous. So, but take me back. Okay, so you have all these sisters. You're in Boston. You went to this really
tough, really prestigious school. Where only the tough survive type of thing.
What made your parents put you in that school? Do you know?
It just had the reputation.
Okay.
And it didn't cost anything. It's just your time. You had to go.
But if it's really preparing you for college and like college prep type of stuff, obviously you went to a very prestigious university, the Merchant Marine Academy, right?
Mass Maritime Academy.
What's the difference?
So Merchant Marine Academy is like the Naval Academy.
Okay.
You get a 4-year education. Taxpayers pay for it. And you owe some amount of sea time afterwards. Or 8 years in the Navy, like the Naval Academy. The other service academies, the merchant academies that aren't the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy, there's Maine Maritime, there's Mass Maritime, there's SUNY Maritime in New York, there's Cal Maritime, and then Texas A&M has the Galveston campus with the marine engineering program. So
no kidding.
Yeah, we could have a whole session on that because it's not quite Navy nuke, but you learn a whole lot. It's learned by doing. So
what is that school? Like, how did you know? Did it obviously it prepared you for that?
It did.
And it was the Massachusetts Marine Academy?
Massachusetts Maritime Academy. It's the oldest maritime academy out of all of them.
Really? Mm-hmm. So how many are there? Because did the Coast Guard go against that too? Or are they more tiered up against like the Naval Academy type of thing?
So the Coast Guard Academy is very similar to the Naval Academy.
Okay.
Not funny, but I actually tried to get in I'm a Naval Academy reject.
Okay, take a number.
Yeah, because
there's a lot of people that try
I
to
went and get the nomination. It's my senior year. I said, hey, I want to go to the Naval Academy. I applied to some other schools in Norwich. I just said, my father was in the Navy. He served in Vietnam. And I said, this might be a good opportunity for me. So I applied to the Naval Academy. I was maybe a B+ student, well-rounded, played football and sports. But when you go to Latin school, it's a tough curriculum, and I was proud to be a B+ student and get out of there. I was in the top 10% of the middle half, the bottom half of the class. So I was like, and a lot of my classmates, MIT and Harvard and all that stuff. And I'm going, I want to go to the Naval Academy. So I get Joe Moakley was the center at the time. I write him a long letter. I get the nomination. I was like, wow, it was his 1A pick too, because they give you this, they send you where you rank kind of thing. So it was a 1A pick, and at the time, I didn't know it was good the nomination's good for 2 years. So went to the Navy building in Boston, did the application, got a Panorex, found out I had extra wisdom teeth and all that stuff. And, it was one of those, like you do the Panorex and all the stuff for Navy physical at the time. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. So I do all that, pass all the medical stuff, but I got waitlisted. They kind of said, maybe not this year. And I had the option to go to that Naval Academy prep school
NAPS.
And NAPS. And, but my blue and gold officer reached out to me that was helping me through the retired Navy captain. And he goes, well, if you don't want to do the Naval Academy prep school, there's this school called Massachusetts Maritime Academy, Mass Maritime, and it might be a good fit for you. If you go there, get above a 3.0 in your freshman year, you can reapply your nominations good for that second year, and you'll probably get in. I said, all right. So I never saw Mass Maritime before. I knew where it was. Cape Cod.
Where is it? Oh, it's
Cape Cod, right in Cape Cod.
Beautiful area, man.
So now it's in the May time frame, and I had all my hopes and dreams pinned on the Naval Academy, and they were like, not going to be you. But you maybe try next year. And so I apply late, I get in, and then I find out there's indoctrination boot camp type of thing in the end of August. And so there I am, and I get all the documentation together and had to have a passport and all this other stuff. So I get all that stuff ready, and like then you're standing in line, like, getting yelled at, trashing your left hand and all that stuff, not in your right hand. And you stand in line, they process you. And then it's like squad leaders yelling at you for like 3 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks of orientation and indoctrination, mini boot camp, so to speak. And they really beat on you. They broke you down and built you back up as I would assume they do during boot camp. And it was a whole lot of fun. And so your freshman year, you have a lot of different evolutions, but the two main majors are marine engineering, which is engineers in the engine room running the plant, or marine transportation, which are deck officers and drive the boat, so to speak, navigation and cargo ops. And so I picked marine engineering. I was always a tinkerer, but your freshman year, you kind of do a joint curriculum. Just, a lot of intro to marine trans and a lot of intro classes in seamanship. And so, but they went on sea term, like January 3rd through, I think, second week of March, you go out to sea. Because to get your Coast Guard license at the end of 4 years, you need at least 250 days of sea time. So you have a mini semester at sea where you take the school ship out, and we had like a 560-foot steamship sitting there. at the campus, and you do all your maintenance on the ship. You do some of your classes on the ship, and then you go out to sea for 2.5 months during the winter.
During the winter,
and sometimes it was good ports. But my freshman year, we did Northern Atlantic cruise in the winter. It was pretty rough seas.
So like sailing through Norway and all the way to...
No, we didn't go that far. But Port of Calls, where we stopped. She's like a Wayback Machine here.
Greenland?
No, we Tenerife in the Canary Islands. We stopped at Tenerife. We went through the Straits of Gibraltar into the Med.
No shit.
Yeah, and then we did Barcelona, Spain, and Naples, Italy.
Damn, you sailed.
Oh yeah.
All right, I've done all that.
So we went through. I never saw Gibraltar. It was always foggy.
We stopped. It's 3/4 of a mile wide, 1 3/4 mile long, and had 242 bars when I was there.
It sounds like a place that was not good for 600 sailors to show up.
They intentionally made sure that we were only there for less than 36 hours, right?
So, I can imagine.
And we did we were doing a NATO operation with one of Her Royal Majesty's naval submarines. So when we were surfaced, transiting back into Gibraltar in the Med, they had guys playing bagpipes on the top side, and it was all fog. It was amazing. You couldn't make it out of a movie, right? And then they hosted us, and we played rugby with them.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
Oh, no, they smoked us in all aspects of that Liberty Port, from the drinking to the sports. The only thing that we could do better than them...
professional drinkers, right?
Yeah, well, we were professional shit talkers. So right around that time, it was in 97, and
you were on a sub at the time, right?
Yeah. And some things were going down with Clinton and Monica Lewinsky back here, and we were taking some shit for that in Gibraltar. But then there was the princess had died, and they take that shit pretty serious too. So we were probably giving it back after a few bars, you know what I'm saying? But Gibraltar is one of the greatest Liberty ports.
I mean,
Gibraltar's a great town. It has its own money, you know what I'm saying? I think it's got like sterling or whatever it uses, but whatever it is, Gibraltar pesos for all I know. But so you did Naples. I didn't pull Barcelona. I did Rota, Spain. You didn't stop in Gibraltar, but you transited through.
We went through it.
What were you on? How big was the ship? The school ship was 300 or so 600 feet?
It was 564 feet and 3/4 of an inch. It was one of your Youngie knowledge things, and I probably got that wrong. So if there's any mass maritime...
But were you taking classes plus getting watch stations that you were...
Yeah, so they had it all worked out. So there were so you had 6 companies when you were in the normal campus and you're at school and not on board the ship, there was, I think, 6 companies. So your first through 6th company, which are almost like 6 frats, so to speak. If you're a second company, you hated every other company. You did all your intramural stuff, second company. You had marching competitions and drill competitions, second company.
No shit.
Oh, yeah, big time.
So that Maritime Marine Academy, or the Massachusetts Maritime Academy, I mean, in that picture I saw where your whole facial situation was reversed, the hair was on the face, and the face was
it was
bald. Now
I was inverted.
Yeah, that's right. But I mean, you guys were, what do you call seniors there? Firsties? What do you call the seniors?
I mean, upper jobs, upper class, just
how big
seniors.
is that school? How
many
students?
I always say it's probably pejorative, but it's a boutique school. There's only like 1,500, 2,500 students there between.
That's not small, man. It's
small.
But
it's
for what you're doing,
but very specialized. Maybe 5, 6 majors.
What you're doing. I mean, even the academies are like 4,000 or 5,000 students. The military, you can't. If you have too many people, there's a compromise in quality.
You just dilute it, yeah. You just dilute it down. And but no, about 1,500 at the time. I think it's north of 2,000, 2,500 right now.
I have to imagine that has so much history at that university too, simply because
wooden ships and iron men.
Hold on, but I mean, how many people went to that school? People don't realize World War II, it was like the Merchant Marines. It was those people were getting smoked in all those convoys. They were not attacking the Navy
most people don't understand what the whole Liberty ships and what the industrialization and how the riveted ships were built. And they were launching, I mean, U-boats sank so many Liberty ships, it wasn't even funny. And we were delivering a ship a day across a couple different shipyards, Philly shipyard and some others. And I think there's only 2 Liberty ships left. And one of them is in San Francisco, and I forget where the other one is. It might be in Philly. But, riveted ships, steam recips, the old like...
So how did you know that you wanted to do this? When did you discover this? When you were at the school?
So
at the high school, the Latin school?
Yeah. So when I was at Latin school, I didn't know that I necessarily wanted to be a marine engineer. I knew I wanted to be an engineer. And again, I said, maybe the military is good for me. I'll go to the Naval Academy. And Top Gun was big back then. I mean, who didn't want to,
that's also
choker whites in the aviated glasses and like, man.
Talk about how you were inverted?
That's right.
That's right.
Oh, But so the funny thing was, I have a great freshman year. I get like a 3.3. Really enjoying it. You know, the marching and the uniform stuff was real easy. We had khaki. You know, you're wearing khaki Navy officer uniforms all day, and just the hands-on piece of operating the steam plant. Also doing the deck side, because when you're a freshman, you go out to sea. You spent so getting back to it, there's 6 companies, but there were 3 divisions when you went out at sea: A division, B division, C division, but you spent a third of the cruise doing maintenance. You did a third of the cruise doing training, and then you did a third of the cruise on watch.
Yeah.
But when you did your third on watch, you spent that third half in the engine room and half on the bridge. So they wanted to make you well-rounded of like, oh, I'm going to be a marine engineer, but they're going to give you a taste of what I mean, bow watch on board that shit.
Did you not like that side, the operation side up top?
It was easy.
It just wasn't as hard.
But then again, I wasn't in any kind of degree of responsibility either. So of course you would look at it and be like, look at all those guys. It's easy. They're playing with the charts, telling the ship to go. And then you go down the steam plant. You're in like a 1950s vintage Bethlehem steel, D-type boilers, you know, HPLP, IP turbines, a lot of steam reduction, like old, like bunker C. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't a coal stoker or anything like that, but
what was the fuel?
It was bunker C. We burned basically number 6 oil, which at room temperature, you put bunker C in a number 6 oil in a 5-gallon pail at room temperature, you could stand on it. You won't sink. It's like tar.
For real?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I had no idea. Do they still use that and operate on that?
So my understanding is there's a lot less number 6 that's available because, I mean, us being in Houston, I mean, with all the refineries, but when they frack it, when it goes in the fractionation tower, you get all the naphthenes and all the methane and everything off the top, and then you get gasoline and kerosene, and then as you continue to distill it and crack the fuel, you get it to a point where it just won't crack anymore, and you can't get anything out of it. That's what's left over is number 6 oil.
No kidding.
So it's like tar.
Interesting. And that gets
high heat content, crap, very sooty, trash. So
efficient.
No, well, it depends on how you define efficiency, but when you're a ship and you go, I'm a cargo ship, I'm going to move stuff from point A to point B. Besides people, what's your number one cost is fuel. So if I can use this, if I can turn somebody else's trash into my gold, like they built a lot of the plants around number 6 oil because it was just so inexpensive versus number 2 oil, which is diesel, which is more of a refined product and it costs more. Versus the crap that nobody wants. But as they continue to optimize the existing infrastructure at refineries, there's less and less of it because they've found other ways to get more carbon content out of it into the different fuels. So they just, instead of having 20-30% waste in bunker C, they've got it down small. So it's not
to change the fuel source for these ships. So you looked at the Naval Academy, you knew that you wanted to be an engineer, you wanted to get on the ocean, and you end up at the Mass Maritime Academy. Did you know anybody there, by the way?
No one.
First, and how far was that from home? Hour and a half?
Yeah, about an hour.
Cape Cod, about an hour and 45 minutes.
Depends on the traffic at the bridges.
I got you. I loved Cape Cod, by the way.
Now they get the flyover. I haven't been there in a while, but now they fixed it so you don't have the rotary. There was a rotary. Like, let's park a rotary roundabout, whatever you call it down there, right in front of the bridge. So instead of straight shot over the bridge and an off ramp, you had to go through this rotary, and it's like it would just back up because
people don't know how to use them.
Well, people don't know how to drive in Texas around a roundabout.
Yeah, that's for sure. The Texas highway system takes a little bit of time to get used to it, though, don't you think?
Oh yeah,
it was so.
I drive I-10 every day.
Oh, do you really?
I-10, 30 miles each way, Katy, Texas, on the west side of Houston, all the way to downtown. I-10's a whole lot of fun.
Man, so
any day of the week.
For real? Not really. So
it's 12, 13 lanes across when you go both directions.
I guess that part is true. It's like LA like that. But so in your freshman year, you got to do a little bit of both. And
you got to do a little bit of both.
But what were you really focused on? Was your passion towards the engine room still?
I love the engine room. I love stand and watch. I love being a watch stander in the engine room, fixing stuff. Don't get me wrong. Being on the bridge and being on the bridge wing and, you know, the lights off and just a red light and looking at the radar and driving the ship. I had an opportunity to stand, you know, at the helm, drive the ship, took Iron Mike and autopilot off and sit there and look out bird's eye view of the, you know, Steel Beach and waves crashing over the bow and everything. But then you also had to do like bow watch and stern watch, and they had sound powered phones on the bow, all the way up in the bow. You had to, freshmen would get parked out there, and you're in the med, and it's force 9 storm, and you look like a banana, the Gordon's fisherman in your foul weather gear, and you're like, I see a light, two points abaft the starboard beam, and they go, yeah, we saw that on the radar like an hour ago. Yeah, but thanks for letting us know. And you're like, okay.
Well, I might
you stand there for an hour, like freezing.
Oh yeah, an hour is right the most they could put you there too. I was taking watches where they would only put you on the bridge for like 30 minutes at a click. So basically, it'd take 15 to 20 minutes to put all that foul weather gear on. Then you'd stand watch for just a few minutes, it seems like, and then it took you about that much time to pull it back off again, right? And you lose your motor seals in your hands. That's how cold you'd get.
Oh yeah, it's
cold as shit in New England.
Oh yeah,
and look, I don't know how hard it was on the ships you were on, but I was basically sailing in one of those things, a bottle on the water with a lot of motion back and forth. So the ships that you were on, I mean, how did you know you weren't going to get seasick?
It's always a risk. To me, it was a lot of, these are a lot of my classmates. I don't want to be the one that's puking on my boots, and you kind of talk yourself out of it. There were a few times in the med and some of the other sea terms, we saw 20, 30 degree rolls all the time, and you'd be sitting in the mess deck, and all of a sudden you're in the med, and your tray of food is all of a sudden sliding across, and the chairs are sliding across, and they're piping over 1MC, like stow your gear and all that stuff, and you're just sliding around. You're like, this is fun. But you're in the mess deck, which is, I think, 2 decks above main deck, and all the windows and everything. You can see the horizon, and all of a sudden you see nothing but ocean. You're like, ooh, we're going to come back from this roll. Yeah, but we're sliding around. It's so much fun. You didn't really know.
That's so much fun, man. That would make me throw up just talking about it.
9 storm, but again, it's like then the cleanup and everybody's food's everywhere. And it wasn't even a food fight or anything like that, but it's like you're just laughing and we're going to take another roll next, and
what was the longest
sliding everywhere?
What was the longest time you were at sea for? One click.
I think 95 to 100 days.
That's a long time.
Yeah.
I mean, look, that's a long time for anybody to be doing anything.
It was after I got out of school, I still had my license, but so that was my freshman year, and like I said, great protocols. And then my blue and gold officer called back at the end of my freshman year, and he goes, "Hey, you got like a 3.3. Do you want to reapply to the Naval Academy?" And I said, I got a question for you. Do I have to do a plebe year again?
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to be pond scum all over again. I'm like, I think I'm good right where I'm at. I just come back from the med.
Yeah.
Second semester, I played football in college. It was D3. I got to play football. I was definitely not playing football at the Naval Academy, and all those things. And I said, I think I'm good right where I'm at. But thanks for reaching back up. I never went to.
So you could have. You probably could have got back in. I think if you demonstrate, you prove yourself, and you try again. I mean, I think one of the things that they try to do is say no to as many people as they can, because they want people to, if they really want it, they'll wait for that extra year, and you already kind of started your clock on that transition where your first year is just dog shit, right? I mean, you're supposed to get shit on. I mean, I say that, and there's people that are going to be listening to this, and they're going to be like, that's bullshit. And then the answer is, you're bullshit. Because the reality is we put hard men on those ships and hard women on those ships, and we rather pressure test them on port before we put them out in the ocean where they could put someone else's lives.
It's not easy work. Anybody that goes to any one of those academies, Naval Academy, goes out to sea, Navy, I mean, it's not easy work.
So it's funny.
It might be simple, but it's not easy.
So like statistically speaking, there's a very small percentage of the U.S. that puts on a uniform of any kind, right? And of that, to get to the point where you're wearing that uniform and that we that don't wear that uniform could respect and admire it, we have to know that it stands for something. And traditionally, that you got yelled at, and they're close enough to your face as they're kind of screaming at you where you're wearing some of their spit, and they're telling you everything you did wrong, and you're put in all these no-win situations where it's supposed to be hard, it's supposed to suck, because they want you gone, because you'd rather than break. Like you were saying, the attrition rate at your high school was 600 and 350 graduates. Like that's Ivy League type of pressure almost, right? And then if you think about what you were doing at that academy, that's life and death stuff you're learning, right? You're not just learning like, hey, this is what a power plant is and this is how you navigate, but you're learning leadership and mortality and how to navigate around those things by using your hands and depending on a team, right? Yeah. So to do that, it's friction.
I've had a lot of near misses on that aspect. I mean, I'll take every one of those opportunities I had where I saw something bad go happen as a learning opportunity. But I was so you do the cruises your freshman year, sophomore. You got to do all 4 years, but your junior year you get an opportunity to kind of do an internship with another company or go sail, you can sail with the school, or you can say, hey, I want to get a billet on an oil tanker as a midshipman.
That'd be kind of cool.
And and so the guy that did all the placement, this guy, Captain Al Wilson, he goes, and I knew him a little bit because I've helped him with some alumni golf tournament stuff. They were boondoggles, and I was a good volunteer. Like, hey, I need 5 volunteers, and I was the first one to raise my hand. I didn't know what it was for, but hey, I need some help in the alumni golf tournament. And this Captain Al Wilson ran that. And so my freshman year, I get to drive around, and it was nothing but maritime alumni. And you're a freshman in college, and you get all these former alumni. Former students, alumni there, and they're handing you beers and stuff, and you're like,
"It's greatest."
I'm a freshman. And you're like, yeah, have a beer. You're like, all right. So it was a blast. So I get to know Captain Al pretty well, and so my junior year comes around. He goes, "You gonna do a sea term with somebody else?" And I said, "Yeah, I was thinking about it." And he goes, "Well, have you thought about Military Sea Lift Command, MSC?" And I said, he goes, "Man, it's always an adventure on those ships. You're gonna have a lot of fun." And they always have.
I don't even know what that is. So what is that?
So
for anybody else's.
Yeah. So Military Sea Lift Command. It's basically another government agency, but they do all the sea lift for the Navy. So all the TAOs. I sailed on a TAO, which is a fleet oiler, basically a floating gas station. Gray hull. It looks like a Navy tender or Navy oiler, except it's got a blue and gold stripe around the stack. Okay. And it was about, I want to say, 130 sailors on there, civilian sailors, and about maybe 20, 30 active duty Navy, because they did all the comms with the fleet.
Where were they stationed at? I mean,
San Diego.
So you were on a boat station out of San Diego?
Absolutely, yeah.
And then did you have to fly there, or you make that your duty station? Oh, well, you were in school still, it sounds like.
I was in school.
Junior year?
Yeah. So it was one of these. So I signed up for that. And there was 3 engineers and 3 deck officers, and middies, midshipmen, and they said, "Hey, we got a TAO for you guys. It's in Singapore." I'm like, "I'm going to Singapore. I want to meet a ship in Singapore. This is awesome. Junior in college, I'm gonna fly to Singapore." Right?
That would be cool.
Really cool. And so they had to bring us to Norfolk first to get processed. So they brought us to the MSC headquarters in Norfolk, Virginia. They gave us all our IDs, Geneva Convention cards, and all that stuff, and our military IDs, and do a background check for security clearance. And they processed us there, and they said, "Hey, you're going to go meet this ship out in Singapore." So they give us our orders, and at the time it was government travel, and it was like you made a stop. It wasn't a direct flight; you had to make a stop
like
everywhere.
19
and
stops.
It was Norfolk, Virginia, to Chicago O'Hare, to San Francisco, to Hong Kong, to Singapore.
Oof.
And so we make the first leg. Me and 5 of my classmates. We make the first leg. We get to Chicago. We're sitting on we got on the plane in Chicago. It's an old DC-9. Intercom doesn't work. We're on the runway. Intercom doesn't work. Can't take off. So now we're waiting. We're waiting. They didn't go back to the terminal. We're waiting. We're waiting. Meanwhile, we already know that if we don't catch the flight in San Francisco, there's a curfew in Hong Kong, and we're not getting out. So now we're waiting. We're waiting. We're waiting. And that was back when they had the old phones on the back of the headset and the headrest in front of you.
Those days.
And then you could slide your credit card. Yeah. So I was poor. I didn't have a credit card. There was one of my classmates was a little bit older, this guy, Andy Smith, and he goes, "I got a credit card." And he swipes, and he calls Military Sea Lift Command in Virginia Beach, and he's like, "Hey,
we're stuck.
What do you want us to do? Like, we're stuck on a plane. We're going to miss our flight." And they're like, "Get to San Francisco. We'll figure out what to do with you." So we finally take off. They fix the intercom. We've been on the runway for 2-3 hours on this DC-9. We finally get to San Francisco, and it was an adventure. And meanwhile, we're wearing khaki uniforms, and so we get to San Francisco with sea bags and the stuff we need for the next 60 days, and it was an absolute shit show. But so they said, "Hey, so the airline knew we missed our flight, and they gave us vouchers for a hotel. They put us up in this really nice hotel." Then we had to ride the BART system to go find, and because we called back the next morning, and Virginia Beach goes, "Well, your ship didn't wait for you; they left." We're like, "Okay, so what now?" They're like, "Well, we got a Military Sea Lift Command shipyard in Oakland, so why don't you guys make your way to Oakland?" And there was no Uber, Lyft back then. This is like 1997 timeframe, so it's like, okay, so we get on the subway, the BART or whatever. We make our way to Oakland. They gave us instructions, go to the Point Loma Inn, and And we get to this government hotel where they had everybody from Military SEAL Command, and it was chalk outlines on the. I mean, it was not a good place. And you're a junior in college. It's Oakland. Yeah. You're like, we're in a rough part of town. We're getting a government per diem.
It's like Gotham City, man.
Yeah, and it's like. I had no cash, and they're giving us per diem, $18 a day. You're like, man, I'm going to live off my $18 a day. So we had accumulated a couple days worth, and what am I going to do with the paper check? They handed you a paper checks type of thing. Here's your per diem paper check. And you're like, okay, well, what am I going to do with this? And I'm from Boston. Like, there's a check cashing place down the street in Oakland. So like the five of us take our checks. And we're just,
getting mugged on the way back?
No, but it was a little dicey. You just kind of like, well, what are you doing walking into a check cashing place? You walking in with a check, you're walking out with cash. I mean, and it was about a mile and a half, like walk. It was probably the fastest mile I've ever done. Getting back to the Point Loma Inn, and then so they actually brought us to the shipyard, and like the USNS Saturn was getting decommissioned. We helped cut up some ships while they were finding another ship for us to go on, and. So we saw the Mercy was out there, the hospital ship, and we were in the shipyard for a little bit. And then like a week later, they said, "Hey, we have orders for you guys, only for the engineers. There's a ship in San Diego waiting for you guys." So they give us orders. So the three of us, just the engineers, 3 deck officers. So just the engineers, we hop on a plane, we go down to San Diego. We get to the San Diego Navy base. We're showing our IDs, and we're at the guard shack, and they're like, "Who are you? What are you doing here?" Like, "We're here from Military SEAL Command." Same reaction as you. "What's Military SEAL Command?" I'm like, all of us are like, "The ship's tied up here in San Diego Navy base." Then he pulls out his binder and he goes, "Well, let me make a phone call." He makes a phone call. "That ship's underway." Like, "We got orders right here." They're like, "Yeah, that ship's underway. Can't help you." Well, like, "So what? You just want us to sit?" Like, we tried to explain our situation. And he had no sympathy for us. And then he goes, "Well," and then finally he relented a little bit, and he goes, let me make this other phone call." So he makes another phone call, and the Pecos was tied up because they were doing engine overhauls and doing a little yard period there. And so the chief mate from the Pecos comes over, and he goes, "Hey, I'll take you." And he's a Naval Academy grad, so it's come full circle. So he's like, "Hey, I'll take you guys. We're doing it, and you can hang out with us if you want to, and maybe pick up the other ship, but it's underway for the next 2 weeks." We're like, now we're doing I have to have a certain amount of sea time to get my Coast Guard license, and we're just eating days right now, not being underway. And so he takes us to the ship, puts us in berthing, gives us a room, and the three of us just start working there and rebuilding the main engines. It was a lot of fun. Rebuilding main engines from the block up. Big medium speed Enterprise engines. These
how big?
Cold peel stick PC-24s. They were V10, like 25,000-30,000 horsepower engines, and there were two of them in port and starboard. And we just wrenching on the Bergen house gens, and a smaller V16 engine. Some cats there too for all the house load and stuff. A pure motor ship, diesel ship. And it was just an awesome yard period to wrench on engines. Granted, we weren't getting sea time. Maybe we could kind of say we were, but just getting ready. And then we got to go sea trials. But so the funny thing is, the Pecos, the 197, the Pecos, the senior most Military SEAL Command master or captain was the master of that ship. And so they let us eat in the officers' mess. So we're in the officers' mess, and on I think the second day there, the captain catches wind that there's 3 deck cadets in Oakland doing like nothing, and he goes, "There's 3 deck cadets up there, really?" And yeah, they're still looking for a ship. So we gave him the full skinny, and they were there the next morning. He made one phone call and probably told a bunch of people to get their heads out of their ass, and he'll gladly take them. And then all of us wound up on that ship. All 6 of us wound up on that ship. And it was
the Pecos?
On the Pecos, yeah. Okay. It was a lot of fun. And shooting the messenger lines, we did 4 or 5 unwraps. So we put the main engines back together again. And that's where that was my first kind of realization about simple but not easy when it comes to being in the engine room and kind of the risks out there. Because one of my classmates with the engineers, I was working with the second engineer, this guy, Rick, And as we were rebuilding one of the engines, all the individual cylinder heads were up on main deck, and we had to bring them in the trolley system, get them in the engine room, get them to the winch to lower them down to the lower level of the engine room. And we had all the deck grading up, and so the three of us, this guy Sam, who was my classmate, Rick, the second engineer, and myself, we were taking them off the trolley, putting it on the hook to the winch to lower it down through the deck to the lower engine compartment. And as we were struggling to change the straps from one hook to the other, my classmate Sam comes around to the other side to give a hand, steps right through the deck plate.
Oof.
2 decks down in the engine room, lands on his side, head whips down into the deck plating. It's all just deck plating. And it was just one of those like, oh fuck. Like, and
sounds horrible.
It was terrible experience. He still goes out he's been sailing the whole time. He's a chief engineer with 25 years experience. It never slowed him down.
It's because he fell and he knew what happens when you do not pay attention. And I bet you he didn't make that mistake twice.
No, probably not. He's probably the safest guy.
Yeah.
He's probably the safest chief engineer out there sailing on his license in the merchant fleet.
So he was with you. Did you guys end up getting some seat time out of that one?
We did. We finally, once we get the engines back together, Sam didn't come with us, but he spent 4 days in the hospital, fractured his skull, broke 4 ribs, punctured his lung. His eye was like this big. I mean, you just watched it go, brrr. And I've never seen somebody's brain that scrambled and it had trauma like that. Whereas like the Navy, the thing that saved his life, one that the chief mate came down, we got him in a cope later. We got him out of the engine room in about 25, 30 minutes, which was amazing. Put him on the stern, stood over him on a pallet, got him onto the pier. But the San Diego Navy Fire Department was phenomenal.
Yeah.
I mean, just their response. But if we weren't tied up and we were underway, he probably wouldn't be with us right now. There's no way that...
Because you guys don't take you guys probably have some sort of medical...
There's Binnacle and a medical guy.
Yeah, but not for that type of stuff probably.
Yeah. There's only a certain amount of stuff you can do. And if you're 1,000 miles from, we had a helideck on the stern. I mean, but if you're out of range, you're like...
Yeah, that sucks. So when you did that your junior year, did it open up anything for you? Did you fall in love with, like, do you end up ultimately becoming a sailor on the fleet for a little bit before you
we finally made our way underway, got some sea time there, we had to do a project, like self-study project. We basically cataloged the engine. You spend a lot of time operating the engine and participating, but then you spend a lot of time in like the engineering library of like, what's the horsepower, or what, getting the details of the engine, because you had to do a report. And they had a certain number of evolutions you needed signed off, inert gas system, all sorts of stuff that you had to do is, just switch over from one turbo generator to the other, switch house load from one gen to other, parallel gens, a lot of good activities like that you had to demonstrate and get signed off on by the chief engineer. And then, came back for the second semester, sailed my senior year. I did a couple transfers with one training, I had my third engineer's license when I graduated, motor and steam, and did a couple transits where they said, hey, we need a couple temporary staff to bring, transport SUNY Maritime ship to Mass Maritime. It's 4 or 5 days, cold plant startup, 3 or 4 days transit, lay it up, turn it over, and then, just a day worker and, $250, $300 a day, part-time stuff. And that's when I graduated, that's when I got my first job out of college was Portsmouth Naval Shipyard, code 2340, shift test engineering and reactor refueling. So I was, got a good opportunity, tons of training, went straight out of school and went right back into school and did the civilian side of nuke program and did all the 6-factor formula and class.
Where's that at?
The Portsmouth, New Hampshire, Naval Shipyard there.
So I picked up my submarine there, Portsmouth, Kittery, Maine, right? And
it's Kittery, Maine, but the closest big post office is
beautiful area.
Oh my God, beautiful.
A lot of history in that port as well. But that's where I picked up my submarine, took it out for sea trials, and then rode the sub back to New London, Connecticut. So what a
688 class?
I was. So you probably saw some of those when you were there, right?
That's all they did. So they didn't do any boomers there. It was only fast boats.
Yeah. And did you any boats? Were you there when the Memphis was there? The USS Memphis 691. Nah.
Was it there in 99, 2000?
No, I was at sea with it.
So.
Then.
I think the La Jolla was in there at the time.
We took it out of the shipyards in like 95, 96. So awesome.
Amazing process there. I mean, 2 years? I mean, did you spend the 2 years there?
No, God, thank God, because I wouldn't have wanted to be a shipyard sailor, right? I wanted kind of like I didn't join the Navy to sit on land, right? I wanted to be at sea, and I got lucky that boat was just getting ready to go back to sea, and it was being retrofitted after a few years in that shipyard. And when they're fixing things, they're sometimes adding more toys to it, right?
Of course.
So I got to be a part of. Thank God, all my instructors were like, "Hey, pay attention to class. You want to be in the top 5 because you know how it ranks. You know, you get so many different billets, and the number one person in the class gets first pick, and so on all the way. So if you're the last person, you're going to take the last job that's available, right? And I wanted to be high enough in which I could have at least some sort of control over my destiny. Right. And but my instructors were single, and they had heard about what this boat was going to do, and they gave me a lot of good guidance. So they're like, "Hey, you don't want to go to Hawaii. You want to go on this boat." I'm like, "It's in New Hampshire." And they're like, "It'll be awesome. Trust me." And I showed up. I was there for like a week and a half before it went to sea trials. So I didn't have to deal with all that other shit, you know? I mean, really all we were doing is getting the ship ready to go to sea.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Getting all the things that have been there, you know, all the stanchions, all the things that they deploy and then leave there for a year or two, you know, when they're just doing retrofits.
Yeah, and most people don't know what I mean, when you think of a reactor on a sub, it's not commercial a commercial reactor, 12 to 18 months, 24 months, they're refueling a third or all of the fuel bundles getting swapped out. Like it's 15, 20-year lifespan on that reactor.
Yeah, sure it is.
So when it goes into yard period, it's 2 years worth of work to go swap that reactor out.
Exactly right.
And meanwhile, they build a semi-permanent structure around it. It goes into dry dock, they put it on blocks, they pump it all out, and then they build, like you can't see it from space, like they build a building around it.
Yeah.
It's pretty neat.
But you went to did you have to go do like a prototype as well, or what were you doing for practicals?
So we spent a lot of time down on the boat because I think there were 2 boats there at the time that they were doing power range testing on and putting them back together after they had refueled. But it was mostly classroom, and then right before I had to go to Puget Sound for about 4 months and go to Bremerton and do basically the same training over again and a lot of that stuff.
And Bremerton's Washington, right?
Right, Washington.
So you went from the Atlantic side. I know it sounds like you sailed the Pacific a few times, but you went back to the Pacific side when you were done with school?
I was just about to go out there and...
when you graduate, though, like if you went to the Naval Academy, you'd be commissioned as a whatever. When you graduated, you were a third-class engineer? That's what you're...
Yeah,
okay.
a third assistant engineer, motor steam. So there's a bunch of different billets you can... ratings you can get, but... When me and my classmates graduated, it was a third assistant engineers, unlimited horsepower, steam or diesel. So you could be a third engineer on a steamship with boilers and steam turbines, or you could be on a motor ship with all diesels.
What did you want to be?
It didn't matter. You get the endorsement for both.
Okay.
I honestly I like steam plants.
Sure.
Steam plants, the smell, the way they operate, the steam turbines.
100%.
Don't get me wrong, it's fun to look at a building size, slow speed diesel and be like, wow, I can look at the crankshaft by going into the crankcase and walking around with a flashlight. I'm inside the engine. But no, I like steam.
Okay.
I've always liked
cleaner.
Steam. Yeah.
Well, you're not using class 6 oil. That seems like tar or something like that, right?
Yeah, but there's a certain smell. Like there's a certain pulling burners out of the boiler. But I mean, that's older technology too. So I mean, if it's not broken, don't fix it.
So when you graduated and you became a sailor, how long were you that for?
In my mind, I never stopped.
Okay.
But
did you ever do anything like Order the Rock, or the Ditch, Blue Nose? I don't know. Did you ever do like Cross the Equator?
I missed that. So when I was at San Diego Navy Base doing my military Sea Lift Command internship, that's when the school ship crossed the equator. So I missed getting shell back.
Yeah.
Missed getting shell backed.
That'd be cool.
I know. I saw all the pictures of my classmates doing the
ceremony.
Stupid shit and
sure.
King Neptune's belly and all that stuff.
Oh, I did all that.
Oh yeah. And my dad had shelled back and told me some of the stories.
Your dad was a shellback. What did he do? He was
so my dad was a plank owner on the what was he on? The USS Lang, hull number 1060. It was a destroyer escort.
Okay.
I think it was not a Knox class or a Perry class. I can't remember, but it's Razor Blades now. But he was a planker owner on it, and he was a sonar tech on it.
Okay, so it was like a frigate.
Yeah, fast frigate now.
Got you.
But it was back then. I guess they didn't come up with fast frigate yet. They want to call it destroyer.
Well, Perry class was the fast frigate for a while, wasn't it? So that's interesting. So you I forgot about that overtone, forgetting that your father was, but that probably had an influence, whether you know on it or two or not, to maybe go be a sailor.
A little bit.
Okay. And then you sailed, and I know you're like, hey, I always have been, but I want to spend the next part for people that are also listening, going through how you transitioned from that, because it sounds like it's almost the same as what I had to go through, or what many of the people that work on my team had to go through, and that you're leaving a hard tribe of people that sounds like some of the people you sailed with, you went to school with for years, right? And there's a bond that's created. Oh, yeah. You know, and then you got into, I mean,
even if you didn't like the individual, you still had that common experience
all the time. Like I would see guys get in fights in the mid-level head, 7 hours before we pulled into Liberty Port, and then they would be slapping each other in the ass and buying each other drinks at the bar, because they may be a son of a bitch, but they were our son of a bitch. And,
right. 100%.
And that's how that works. And I liked that. That's almost like, that's what the family feeling is like. Yes, my sister could be a bad person, but that's still my sister type of thing, you know? But that's a big step, you know? So when you any other cool stories from your time on the pond before you shift into your civilian?
Yeah, there's plenty of good stories, but no.
Any cool ones that you want to share? Or
no, I mean, just the normal. I mean, you do the bilge races in watertight integrity. I mean, they used to do that stuff where you're wearing your coveralls or your boiler suit, and they tape your ankles and tape your wrists. There's a lot of stuff they do. I wouldn't call it hazing, it's probably too strong, but like, hey, go get me a bucket of steam, all right?
Oh, yeah.
Got to go grease the relative bearing and all that type of stuff.
Yeah,
you're running around like...
That's not hazing, that's tradition.
Right, it's tradition. But we did some bilge races where you had to go from one corner of the engine room to the other corner of the engine room, and you couldn't get out of the bilge. So, I mean, you're underneath pumps, the boiler, steam piping.
Running your head into everything.
Running your head into everything, trying not to get burned, make it to the other side type of thing. And again, they did a lot of, and it was always like midnight to 4 watch that you did this stuff. You would never do this like noon to 4 or anything like that. So your watch standard like midnight to 4. So it's 2 o'clock in the morning, and you're like, hey, what do you know?
Oh, that's what you do.
And you're out at sea, you're in the middle of the Met or whatever, and you're like, hey, let's get all the plebes, let's get all the freshmen over here. It's time, it's time to do a build race or something. Like, oh yeah.
That's also why you're like, by the time you're a sophomore, you're like, I'm not going back and repeating my freshman year, especially as a
I mean,
freshman at midshipman.
I wasn't afraid of it, but it was one of those like,
you did your time.
And then you made your friends, and like you said, you have your shipmates, and you have this group and this cluster of friends that you've built from all walks of life, and you've gone out to, you have that shit experience, you got out to sea, you've done that type of stuff, and you're like,
do any of those people, when they graduate, sounds like some of them took a commission in the Navy?
A bunch, yeah.
Okay.
I have
so they're on ROTC.
I have some really esteemed naval classmates. One of my classmates, Colin Cordan, he's Task Force 57 Commodore or something like that, doing autonomous naval vessels, the small autonomous stuff. Out
of Norfolk or something?
He's in some sandbox right now. He's probably in the... I think I saw him. He was out in Bahrain or something like that. But he just posted some stuff on LinkedIn. And then I got a lot of classmates that either went into the Coast Guard, and they're 05s, 06s in the Coast Guard. Another classmate 2 years before me was Marisol Shalas. She's was the first Latino Apache pilot.
Really?
And I think she works for one of the Joint Chiefs now as one of the aides. She's in DC. Like, I mean, just...
So you've had some successful
There's some
colleagues.
really successful surface sub, you name it, Navy, Marine Corps. There's some hard charges out there.
No doubt.
Raised their right hand at graduation. They didn't even do boot camp. They went straight to the fleet.
Good for them.
And that's one of the benefits of Maine Maritime, Mass Maritime, Cal Maritime, is that it's close enough that you can... Yeah, you maybe 2 weeks of knife and fork school type of thing, but in Newport or something, but they go right after the fleet.
Good.